The major problem of Israel is with the young generation of the black community.
You know, I wonder why Israel's biggest problem is the young generation of the black community when we're all the way over here. We don't have no land, we don't have no communities, we don't have no commodities, we don't have any resources, we don't have any bombs, we don't have any nuclear weapons, we don't have any missiles, we don't have any military. Why would we be the biggest threat? Wouldn't the biggest threat be the people you're actually in war with? What do we have to do with anything y'all got going on? Could it be that the conspiracies about identity theft are true? Perhaps. Because I doubt that, a lie would be a big threat to an entire country. I don't think a lie would. But what I think is the biggest threat is that the truth is being revealed and the world knows that. Time's up.
This is a t-shirt, and the image on this shirt is the image of Ibrahim Traore. Ibrahim Traore is one of the leaders who is shaking the Western powers. He's one of the leaders who is putting the Western powers on toes, They thought Africa will never wake up, but they didn't see Gen Z coming. They didn't see the youths coming. Fearless, outspoken, and digitally awakened. This is a generation that cannot be colonized mentally or spiritually. Okay? Now, kings and queens, welcome back to my YouTube channel of truth, power, and awakening. And today, we speak about a force shaking the foundations of control. And this is Gen Z's Africans. These are the generations that questions everything. Generation that refuses to believe that Europe or America holds the key to success. This is the generation that sees through propaganda, religious manipulation, and the so-called civilized world, okay, that enslaved their ancestors. These Gen Zs, they are not just scrolling, they are studying. They are not just tweeting, okay? They are teaching. I am part of them. I am the media between Gen Z and Millennium. Okay? Now, before I continue this video, I want to play you some clips here about the youths from Africa, what they are doing, the threat and everything. They are a threat to the system. Let's watch these clips and then we continue.
The people who govern Uganda are so shameless. And let me tell you, these guys, yesterday I was reading the budget. At first I was just focusing on agriculture. But then when I look at the budget allocation, guys, there's not even a sector known as the health sector. It's not there. Everything has been put under human capital development. And under human capital development, 3.3 trillion is allocated to the health of the people. And I really hate how this guy is always writing, "Oh, Madam Speaker, I have allocated this amount of money to the health of Uganda." Like as if he's God giving us and we have to beg him and oh my God, it's not Uganda's money. Anyways, let's move on. Mulago was given only 17.8 billion Uganda shillings, yet they requested for how much? For 100 billion Uganda shillings. Then that stupid Uganda Airlines, I already told you guys, received 1.2 trillion. Like what the fuck? That is almost even, it's about more than half the agriculture sector received. So when I tell you guys these people are stealing and they're stealing systematically, I'm going to now break down the budget for you guys because I'm wondering why we didn't riot. Yeah, so don't be surprised. Health sector is not a sector in Uganda. They put everything under human development. Oh, I have to tell you that 3.3 trillion I told you guys includes education, the health, and social protection. Yes. So that is their budget. But I want to tell you that public sector administration, those be pension things and all, they received 7.1 trillion. Yeah, that's State House as well. 7.1 trillion. So I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, the title of this budget is called Monetizing Uganda's Economy Through Agriculture. And then you're telling me you gave agriculture 1.9 trillion, less than 3%. You guys, bring back shame. Our government is not ashamed. They are joking. They're still making budgets like it's 1980. It makes sense. Guys are 90 years. They are 80. They are 70. It makes sense. Yo, I'm so furious.
I don't blame the African leaders and chiefs.
So
A man, King Leopold II, suggested for a meeting, and it was chaired by Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. I blame the Berlin Conference.
Why?
Because they peacefully, if now the European countries had not went to the Berlin Conference, they would have still been fighting until now, for African countries, but they would never get Africa. And even by that time, in that space left,
And the problem of Congo, if Patrice Lumumba were to be alive, Congo would have been the best place to live on earth. But because they took him down, and African leaders, they can't have a say in this. African Union is one of the most useless organizations, or excuse me, but that is a fact. An organization that cannot fund their own movement, they don't have money. 50-something countries with all resources. Recently, they went to the United States begging for money to solve the problem of Sudan. They sacked them. They took our images there, drag on the ground. They sacked them. Old men, they blew their face. Bah, they sacked them. And they are not going to give resources on your land. But you went to beg. They said you are going to beg the same people sponsoring the thing in your region. These people cannot fund any activity, which is the reason why they cannot make decisions without being instructed by the imperialists. Last time they wanted to go to, Burkina Faso.
We see our brothers as our enemies because a system caused us to be divided. It is truthful that we were enslaved. We were taken to the Caribbean. We were taken to the Americas. This is our real history. This is the great land of Britain. But what is so great about this land? Our people made this land great. And we should be proud to stand knowing that our ancestors stood. If it was not for our ancestors, we couldn't wear the clothing on our backs today. We would be considered savages. We couldn't have the liberty to walk in the streets and go to our schools. We must remember these things and not become complacent, or leaders that are complacent. We must realize that we are the wealth of our nation. The people, we are the wealth of our nation. Let this not be occasional. Let this not be an occasional thing where you mandate.
We own puppet leaders who have betrayed our continent. You have forgotten the sacrifices of our ancestors and choose to save the interests of our former colonizers. You have traded our freedom for personal gain and allowing colonialists to control our resources and also dictate our destiny. You have become modern-day slave masters, saving the former colonizers which our freedom fighters fought against. We will not be divided. We will rise up and reclaim our continent. We will unite under the banner of Pan-Africanism, driving out all colonial forces. We will build a continent that is controlled by Africans and owned by Africans, not controlled by foreigners. We will continue the struggle for a free, united and prosperous Africa.
But first, I just want to say this thing about foreign investment in Africa. Yes. One thing that is certain is, you see, it is easier to mismanage money or funds that are borrowed or comes in grant than funds that are mobilized by grassroots individuals. Yeah. If we have a common project here and all of us put in $1, we will all go back home keeping track of where our $1 is going. And that doesn't make politicians comfortable. So that is a no-go area for many governments in the continent. Now, when it comes to the infrastructure in Africa, we have to understand that we cannot get the world work for the continent, as in my friend's words, unless and until we have the infrastructure that attracts them to work and get something remaining. The poor infrastructure is what enables capital flights and direct investment occurring within Africa. Because in most instances today, when we look at the logistics, for instance, how many of our big businesses, the likes of Dangote, who invest a lot on distribution, will tell you that in many African society today, the Dangote group cannot operate as a result of poor logistics, poor infrastructure, and not having the ability to negotiate or making it easy by African governments for their projects or their company to reach. Now, we cannot talk about regional integration if we do not build the infrastructure across the continent. The Gambia, where I am from, is just about 2 million people. We are one of the smallest markets in the world. How do we expect the Gambia to produce and grow if an infrastructure is not built for Gambians to integrate and interact and do business with Ghanaians, Nigerians, and other parts of the continent? Another good example is Rwanda today is seen as one of the fastest growing economies in the world. In the top 10, Rwanda is there. In terms of size in the economy, is around 143 out of 193. That is the disaster that occurs because there is no common market across the continent. So these are things that we, the youths, of course, find very difficult to comprehend. And this is what I believe could be our solution. That with the big entrepreneurs that we have there, the big business and developers, the Dangotes, my friend here, Freedom, and the list goes on. There are so many Africans who need to rethink about investment in the continent. Instead of hoarding and hiding our money outside of the continent, we have to come, have trust in the youths, invest in the skills, and influence our governments to forcefully put the enabling grounds so that we can integrate. It doesn't matter if I walk across the continent. As I told you, I've traveled a lot and so many countries in Africa now. And all I see is brothers and sisters hungry of skills. I've seen youths building and making doors, gates in Nigeria, in the province of Nigeria, where we import them from China and Dubai, in the Gambia. This is the problem. And we cannot enhance this unless and until an infrastructure is built to put all of us together. And that is what we need to invest in now as a continent. Africa as a continent, we are made to believe that we have to stick with the financial institutions and financial dealings which are already set by a world without consulting Africa. And this has been the biggest disasters that we young people in the continent will have to leave generations to pay for. When we look at the numbers, we keep borrowing and yet don't multiply. And yet the same numbers that we're talking about cannot be channeled into human development. And that is the threat, that is the fear, and that is the anger and frustration that every African youth today is facing. So we need to have a paradigm shift in the way we deal with the rest of the world, first by looking at partnership. But then, a key important element will be, how do we capitalize on wealth generation within our own environment without destroying it for future generations, but at the same time, have an independent Africa that is fit to produce and distribute for itself evenly. But whenever it comes to the numbers, I am telling you that not just myself, but the 450 plus million youths of the continent are all living in fear of a debt we have to live and pay for, and it has not done anything meaningful to our life and for generations of Africans to come. The first important aspect that we need to invest in as young people, and this is what I've been doing for the past 2 years, is to invest in the mindset. It is not all the time the skill set. We have young people that are dynamic and have skills and can change the paradigm. But how do we change in our thoughts and look inward in the continent to make sure that Africa is able to produce for its own? By December around 2019, I was offered a scholarship to go and study abroad. And this is for the young people. I toned this down and said I wanted to remain in Africa, to study in an African university, to study in an African country, to better equip me to build on those bases and understand Africa more, integrate and interact with the young people out here so that we can shape the future that we want. From that day till now, I've engaged thousands of young Africans on dialogues, intergenerational dialogues, to provide a blueprint that we as young people can rely on for the sustainability of our continent.
So this is to all the African puppets, the African leaders who refuse to have iron in them. This goes to you. I want to tell you, first of all, we don't need democracy. Democracy is foolishness. Democracy is illiteracy. So therefore, we don't need democracy. We have seen what dictatorship have done to Pyongyang. We have seen what dictatorship has done to Russia. We have seen what the dictatorship has done to China. Yet, therefore, we don't need Western democracy in our country. Since you refuse to have an iron in you so that you can lead our country to success, yet therefore you are a puppet to the Western leaders. Be very, very careful, because the youth of Africa, we are waking up, and if you don't change your decision, things are going to be really, really tough for you. Secondly, if you don't stop teaching our children, teaching us the foolishness in schools, the foolish Western policies, foolish Western education system, if you don't stop, you see, you think you are privileged enough that today you are in position, yet therefore your kids are happy, you are also happy. Be very watchful, because you are nurturing hooligans, mafias, gangsters, thieves, armed robbers. Your actions are nurturing them. We don't need all this nonsense. You must wake up and restructure the system by yourself. If you can't, and if you don't have that iron in you, resign and let someone do it.
And the private sector has to be dominated by Africans. This is where we get the problem. Our governments in Africa don't control the core of the African economy. It is controlled by individuals whose sole objective is maximizing profit and sending this money to the outside world. So that makes it very difficult for us as a nation to be able to solve certain societal problems, because they don't want us to spend more on public issues. And that is where our development lies. How do we make sure that we change the education system? How do we make sure that we read books that entails the African value, the African reality, the African history? But if we do not have all this in place, it makes it very, very difficult for us.
I am so happy that African youths are waking up. You know, I've been saying it here. Oh. Yes, I've been saying it, and I'm not joking. They are the ones who will take back their continent. I don't know why these evil men, they choose to be doing what they are doing. They will come for your vote to preaching morals, to preaching good governance, preaching anything good. By the time you give them your vote, they will enter office and start acting like God. Start acting like they are no longer humble.
Well, Barrister, another part of this conversation is the fact that President Rajoelina did say that he is calling for dialogue and respect for the Constitution. And of course, the last part of that conversation is the fact that he did not tender his resignation, which again, the young people in Madagascar are asking for. What should the people make of this video that he made yesterday?
Look, nobody should take him serious.
But he's still the president of the country, man.
Let him come back to his seat now, if he's the president.
When you say nobody should take him serious, why do you mean?
Because he's no longer on seat. How can you be talking to your people from undisclosed location? Before this discussion, what were you doing in office? David, what was he doing in office? But if you have been doing well, will the people protest? No, tell me, you are calling for that.
But Barrister, as a result of the protest, the people clearly made their voice and their opinions known, and the president did drop all of his ministers and the people serving him.
The Ruto did it in Kenya, but it didn't help matters. I'm talking of a situation whereby the people will not be a determinant factor when it comes to governance in Africa.
Isn't that supposed to be a matter of conversation between the people in
No,
power?
we are past that stage, Joe. This conversation, we have been conversing for a long time. We have been, no, that conversation is over. So this time around, you must do what you are supposed to do, those things you promise your people.
So where lies the governance in Madagascar since the president is no more in the seat of power in Antananarivo?
When it happened in Bangladesh and this other, where the prime minister president ran away, the country born, they have taken over their country and they are rearranging everything. So if he leaves office, nature will find its level now. Somebody will definitely take over, and that person will not learn a hard lesson. That's the truth. The country cannot remain in a vacuum like that. At a point, the necessary things will be done, and maybe when this man is not seen, it will be declared that he has abdicated from the throne. He abandoned his duty post.
He has to sit back and allow Western media to intimidate them, to wrongfully let them understand what we've been missing for too long. Because now, all these gadgets we are seeing here is actually sending the message. And you need nobody to tell you the truth. You just have to log it in and go and see for yourself. Read for yourself and you see the truth. If you can't even read, nothing. Just log in Ibrahim Traore. In the last 2 years, and you see the reason why Africa is where it is and why the West is coming back. We'll continue to rise and resist this. And I made this quote and I say this, that it's either they accept it is either they accept the realities of the revolution now, of this generation, or else they wait for the consequence of this revolution. No retrieve, no surrender. Aluta continue.
If you had a black man, take his resources.
If you're an African living abroad, sit down. Let us talk about it. Let's have a heart to heart. Why aren't you investing in Africa? I don't know. Why aren't you investing in the youth in Africa? I know you came here for opportunities. I know this was the land of milk and honey, but why aren't you taking some of that milk and investing back into the youth in Africa? You have family members in Africa. I know you do. You have family members in Ghana, in Gambia, in Tanzania. Why aren't you investing in Africa? Yeah, I'm calling you out.
Now, welcome back. For decades, Africa was treated as a continent without memory, And colonial education disconnected generations from the roots, their own roots, teaching us them, not us, But Gen Z is writing that script. Gen Z has grew up watching empires fall on social media. We are seeing America hypocrisy live on camera. We are seeing the police brutality, the economic collapse, the student loan slavery. We are watching Europe beg for African resources while pretending to be saviors. And through our smartphones, this generation more truth than textbooks ever taught. Okay? We are seeing the archives of Kemet. We are seeing the libraries of Timbuktu and the wisdom of our own ancestors online as Gen Z's Africa. And with that awakening, we were never inferior. We were never behind. That's what we are realizing. We are just lied. We are just lied to. Now, the colonizers' greatest power was control of information. Okay? They banned books, They silenced riots, they rewrote history, but the internet changed the rules. Okay? Gen Z's Africans are the first to wield that weapon freely. One click, just one click, someone can expose corruption, organize protest, or learn coding, business, and history outside the colonial syllabus. Okay? So, Gen Zs didn't need permission from the West to dream. They build empires from their bedrooms. We are building empires from our bedroom. Let me tell you the reality. We are connecting Africans and Africans Americans from our bedroom. Let me tell you the reality. Where I'm doing this, where I'm teaching this is from my own bedroom. We are creating music, studios, clothing lines, podcasts, fintech apps just from our bedrooms. The same technology that was meant to monitor us has become the tool of liberation. Malcolm X said, if you could control the media, then you control the mind. Okay? But right now the media is in African hands and the mind is no longer colonized. These platforms, this TikTok, YouTube, these are not just entertainment platforms. We must know that. And that's what I know. These are not just entertainment platforms. These are classrooms of consciousness. A young man in Nairobi teaches Black history to millions. A girl in Lagos designed fashion that reaches New York. A rapper in Accra calls out neo-colonial powers just in music from where he is. So the revolution is streamed live, and that's what scares the white system the most. The laws of narrative control. Okay? For a long time, they told us that African culture was backward. They said our spirituality was witchcraft and our hairstyle unprofessional, our language primitive. And now Gen Zs flipped that script. Gen Zs, they wear dreadlocks with pride. They speak Swahili, they speak Twi, they speak Yoruba, they speak Shona, they speak Zulu with pride and confidence. Okay? Gen Zs right now blend traditional and modernity fashion. We blend music, traditional music and modern music. We blend art. When you check us, Afrobeat and Amapiano have conquered the global stage. African hairstyle are trending in Hollywood. African dance challenges dominates TikTok right now. But behind that cultural wave lies a spiritual shift, an awakening that cannot be reversed. So when a young African says that I'm proud to be Black, this is not just identity. This is resistance. Because the centuries of colonizers, or the centuries the colonizers' victory was to make the African ashamed of themselves. But right now, Gen Zs, we are not ashamed of ourselves. Now pride has turned, not as ego, but remembrance, Until the lion tells the story, the hunter will always be here. That's an African proverb. Now, Gen Zs is finally letting the lion speak. Now, we have the fall of the white system, the Western system. Because the Western system is built on control, guilty, and dependency. Depends on one thing, depends on ignorance, but that ignorance is dying. White supremacy feeds on silence, but Gen Z's Africans are loud right now. And we call out racism, colonial exploitation, and religious hypocrisy openly. This generation is breaking the mental chains faster than any before. They understand global economics, they understand crypto, digital currencies, and power structures. Gen Zs right now, they know that the IMF and World Bank are not saviors but chains. They know that aid is not help but control. And when a young African questions the dollar system, has become a threat. When a girl from Ghana builds her own AI startups, she becomes a threat. When youths in Kenya or Nigeria against puppet governments, they become a threat. Because you know what? Freedom is no longer philosophical. Freedom is digital, okay? Freedom is economical. Freedom right now, it is spiritual. And the West knows this. The West knows once Africa youth think of themselves, the empire falls. Okay? Know this. Every revolution begins in the spirit before it manifests in the world. And that's what's happening right now. The ancestors are whispering through Wi-Fi waves, through reminding their descendants of who they are. And that's why you see more African youths are leaving religion of colonial origin and returning to ancestral spiritual. Because of what? Because we are seeking the truth within, not from the oppressors. Okay? Right now, they realize that the same Bible used to justify slavery also holds hidden truth. They realize that God is not white and heaven is not Europe. They understand that the real kingdom of God is within the Black soul that refuses to bow. Frantz Fanon once said, the colonized man who writes his own history creates a new humanity. And Gen Z's Africans are writing that history in tweets, videos, music, business plans. You see? The white system can no longer erase us from the story because we are writing our own story. Let me be honest. The fear is real, okay? We all fear. White systems of power have noticed that shift. And not the fear of black people or Gen Z Africa, the fear of white systems. It is the African youth refusing to migrate for survival and instead building home solutions. They see students challenging Western curriculums in universities. They are seeing black content creators controlling narrative and influencing global culture. They are sacred because control was always psychological. And that mind is no longer colonized. And when the mind's up, the body follows. And when the body rises, the system collapses. And that collapse is what they call instability. But to us, it is liberation. Gen Z's Africans are not asking for a seat at the table. We are building our own table, okay? We are building our own table in Kigali, Rwanda, Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, Cape Town. We are. Gen Zs understand Pan-Africanism is not as a dream, but as a blueprint. Unity is our greatest weapon. We know that. Malcolm X said the future belongs to those who prepare it today. And this generation is preparing digitally, spiritually, and economically. This generation is a living proof that Africa does not need saving. It just needs freedom. Okay? Now, you know, they can't bomb internet. They can do some things, but they can't bomb it. They can't colonize Wi-Fi because even right now, Africa has its own internet. And they can't silence 1 billion Africans' voice online. So what the gun did to colonization, the algorithm is now doing for liberation. Okay? Because I'll say this. In the past, colonial powers controlled Africa through borders, armies, churches. But in this century, control was digital, through Western social media platforms, vast news and data surveillance. Yet Gen Z's Africans flipped the script. They became in the news storytellers, filming reality from the streets of Nairobi, the clubs of Accra, the classrooms of Lagos and the markets in Kinshasa. They have showed the world an Africa that was never poor, just robbed. See, we have content creators like me. Mine is just educating. We have like Wodemaya walking across Africa and showing the reality of Africa, the richest side and everything. We have the likes of D. Mwango. We have the likes of, young content creators that are going around telling the true story of Africa, okay? And this is digital Pan-Africanism, a united consciousness traveling faster than any colonial message ever could. Now, in the 1990s, Africa was the consumer of Western technology. And today, Gen Z's Africans are building it, okay? There are coders in Kenya, apps developers in Rwanda, digital marketers in Ghana, gamers in South Africa, innovators in Nigeria. Gen Zs are not waiting for Silicon Valley to hire them. They are becoming Silicon Savannah. Gen Zs are understanding something the old system never expected. Knowledge is currency. And this time, Africa is mining data instead of gold. And we are owning it. Somewhat when a 22-old year creates a fintech app connecting farmers directly to buyers, he destroys the colonial middleman system. When a teenage girl builds a coding school for the village children, she cancels centuries of dependency. When a content creator in Uganda just goes viral for teaching history, she replaced the missionaries. Can you hear that? So this is not just innovation. It is rebellion through intelligence. Dr. Wade Noble said, power is the ability to define reality and have others respond to your definition. And now Gen Z's Africans defines reality and the world responds. The white system built an economy that of African labor and raw materials, but Gen Zs are not interested in the world supplier. No, we are creating self-sufficient ecosystems. Through social media, monetization, freelancing, crypto, and online businesses, African youths are earning globally and spending locally. Hear that? They don't need colonial borders, just only a good internet connection. And that's why countries in the Western panic about digital migration. They can't tax consciousness, they can't sanction creativity, and they can't enslave digital entrepreneurs. Every African influencer earning through AdSense or TikTok Creators Fund is part of an economic rebellion. Okay? because wealth is no longer flowing through European banks but directly to African banks. The World Bank cannot measure that. The IMF cannot control it. It is silent revolution. The rise of the informal digital economy built on skill, art, and connection. Now, when young Africans embraced crypto, the Western world called it dangerous. But what they really meant was independence, because crypto means financial sovereignty. It means no more waiting for foreign banks to approve payments. It means no more dollar chokehold on African trade. Okay, white systems hate decentralizing because it removes control. The same way the Berlin Conference divided Africa by borders, the IMF divides by currency. But crypto, mobile money, and peer-to-peer trade are erasing those chains. Okay, when a young Kenyan sells digital art to a buyer in Jamaica without middlemen, that is Pan-Africanism 2-0. Okay, and every transaction outside the white banking system is an act of economic liberation. Kwame Nkrumah said economic independence is the foundation of freedom, and Gen Z's Africans are proving that's true. The white system used to own the media. They decided who was the hero, who was the villain. But social media has changed that, and now Africans, we are telling our own stories. When Congo suffers exploitation, the world hears it from Congolese voices. When Burkina Faso junta is leading well, we hear from the Burkinabe voices, not middlemen who are going to change the stories. You see, that's why government are trying to shut down the internet during protest, and they know that the digital voice of Africa is more powerful than guns. So this generation, you find them, they are using memes or memes, videos, and live stream as weapons of resilience or resistance. What Malcolm X called the media weapon has finally fallen into African hands. And this terrifies the system because influence is the new empire. The colonial education model trained Africans to serve Western companies, but Gen Z is hacking that model. They learn from YouTube, free online courses, AI tutors, and digital money mentors. Don't wait for universities to bless them. They learn, apply, and earn. And that's why Western universities panic about declining relevance, because Africans youth can access the same knowledge without paying foreign tuition or buying visas. Education was once one of the strongest colonial tools, but right now, self-education is liberation. It is the return of ancient African learning, the traditional of the griot, the philosopher, the community teacher. So one of these quote from Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you will be forever free. And now Africans are reading everything, okay, from finance to history, from AI to astrology, and they are reading it in their own context. When there was a protest in Kenya, Kenya's youths, Gen Zs were protesting. Nobody knew that they will know about the bill because it is a long form written with a lot of words, you know. The constitution is long to read. But you know, Gen Zs in Kenya were teaching themselves online. One Gen Zs teaching the other, putting their knowledge, and we were going there, downloading, reading, and some of the Gen Zs were breaking it down so that a normal person can understand what the financial bill was all about. Everyone understood it, and they went to the street. They got the knowledge through online, and they went to the street and said no to that finance bill, and it went down. Across the continent, digital movements are rising. EndSARS in Nigeria happened. The hashtag EndSARS. Reject financial bill in Kenya. Hashtag Congo bleeding across the continent. Hashtag fees must fall in South Africa. You know, these were not isolated protests. Are signals of generational saying enough is enough. See what's happening in Mozambique. These countries that are protesting and are collecting themselves, just online organizing themselves. Gen Zs are rejecting corruption, exploitation, Western puppetry, and they understand the real freedom is not in slogans, but systems. And they are building those systems online in communities and businesses. And for the first time in centuries, African youth see themselves as one body, you know, not divided by borders or tribes, but united by struggle and vision. So the unity of these Gen Zs is what the West fears the most. Now, I know you have heard of resources wars. Oil, gold, diamonds. Now come the data war. Every post, every click, every selfie, data is gold. Data in the digital age is gold. And And African data is a new frontier. Western companies mine it freely, Yet Africans are waking up to realize the power of owning their own digital footprints. Gen Z's Africans are building African-owned platforms, African AI, data set, African payment systems. They know that whoever controls Africa data controls the next century. And that's why the West wants to regulate African tech, to keep it under the same old chains. But this generation is saying no more. And they are calling it designing and owning for Africa by Africa. This is the digital version of decolonization. The white system deepest fear is not African population. It is African self-belief, because they know there's a power, a psychological shift on that. So the Gen Zs are giving white system pressure. The Gen Zs, Africans, even white Gen Zs are giving their system pressure because they are asking questions and questions. So Gen Zs are waking up, and what is happening is that the West is watching nervously, okay? They see the continent that no longer begs but builds. And Gen Z Africans are the living contradiction of every colonial lie ever told. We are proving everything, that Africa does not need saving. Africa, it is saving itself. What do you think? Tell me in the comment section, okay? Until next episode, peace out.